All right, everybody, welcome on into the Auburn Daily Show. I'm your host, Lance Dawe. Thank you so much for making Locked On whatever. I don't even know what I'm saying at this point. Welcome on into the show. Auburn Daily Show, episode 3. We are 3 episodes into this thing. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about Auburn basketball. We have not talked about Auburn basketball yet on the show. Wanted to be able to get to that today, and we are going to quite literally talk about the entire season, a year in review for the Auburn Tigers, going to talk about the good, the bad, just some final thoughts overall about the season, and then we are going to grade every single player that contributed in some sort of way for the Tigers this season. And whenever I say contributed in some sort of way, we're not going to talk about the walk-ons, all due respect to them, but we're going to give some grades out to the people that contributed to the team this season. So let's go ahead and get into it. Auburn basketball, 28 wins this season, 15-3 in the SEC, lost to Miami in the opening round of the NCAA tournament right off the bat. Something that I want to note here about the Auburn Tigers is that while they did lose in the round of 32, and that was certainly a disappointment for the Tigers, and I think a lot of people would say, yeah, it sucked, and we hate that the season ended the way it did. I think that some people out there are saying that the season as a whole was a failure or was not a success. I've definitely seen certain people on message boards say that. I've seen certain people on social media say similar things, and I've just got to say, I don't feel like the overall collective, the entire season was a failure just because Auburn lost in the round of 32. I think that, sure, it's disappointing that we lost to Miami. It's disappointing that you couldn't get past the first weekend of the NCAA tournament. I still think there were a lot of different things that came out of the season that were positives, right? You still won the SEC championship, the regular season SEC championship. You didn't share it with anybody. You won that outright. You had a couple of All-Americans on your team. You had the freshman of the year. You had the defensive player of the year, and Jabari Smith and Walker Kessler. And statistically, you were impressive in a variety of categories. You set some records. Walker Kessler picked up a couple of triple doubles. Not a lot of people can do that. In fact, not a lot of people at Auburn have done that, and not a lot of people have done it more than once. In fact, Walker Kessler is currently, I believe, sitting just behind Shaquille O'Neal in the SEC in terms of total career triple doubles. I think Shaq had 6, I want to say, might be off on that, and then Kessler had 2 this season. And so there were a lot of really good things that came out of the 2021-22 season. If we're looking at Auburn basketball, we're looking at the year in review, just the whole, the product, the entire thing that was put out there. I think that I'm pleased with the way that the season went. And I'm not saying this to say, look at me, I was right, I got it right all along. I knew exactly what was going to happen, because I don't know a lot of things. I can't predict everything, and I'm certainly not going to predict most things correctly. But I think the writing was on the wall, specifically after the Missouri game, that 55-54 win over the Tigers on the road. I think that the offense in the half court specifically really started to struggle after that point, and it kind of led to Auburn's downfall. And there were certain moments down the stretch where you could pinpoint certain things that happened to be like, okay, that's really not good to see out of a team that's trying to peak at the right time. Oh, that right there, that's something that you don't see out of a team that's going to make a deep run in March. And so I think for me as a fan personally, I was just kind of accepting what was going to eventually come. And I don't remember what loss it was. It was before the Florida game. I know that for certain. But Auburn had taken a loss on the road, and I was frustrated with the team. And in the recap article, I believe it was the game against Arkansas. I might be mistaken. But in the recap article that I put up over at auburndaily.com, I said, and I want to be very specific, I said one of my takeaways was that I didn't think Auburn was going to end up being a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament, And my reasoning for that is their poor guard play down the stretch. And I said specifically in the article, Auburn is going to lose to, and I'm looking at the schedule so I don't get this wrong. They're going to lose to Florida. They're going to lose to Tennessee. They're going to lose to Mississippi State. Was off on that one. They will lose in the first round of the SEC tournament, and then I said I can definitely see them getting bounced by a 7 or a 10 seed by double digits. You can go look at the article. It was published about a month and a half ago at this point. And it's one of those things where you look back, it's like, oh, I was right on everything except the state game, but I was really, really frustrated with the team. And it was like anybody that was frustrated would probably had said something similar at the time. It was like, oh, everything's going to crap. We just might as well everything's just going to end terribly this season. And I was being very negative. I shouldn't have been. I don't think that it's ever really fair to be extremely negative over a situation where your team wins 28 games. But that was my perception of Auburn basketball at the time. And as it turns out, that's what happened. But that doesn't negate the fact, that doesn't take away from the fact that Auburn accomplished so many things this season. So many different things. And specifically, the non-conference slate was very entertaining. It was very, very fun. Auburn got a close win over South Florida early on in the season. Then they went in the Bahamas and played a phenomenal game, one of the best games of the entire year against UConn, a 115-109 double overtime thriller. That was a phenomenal game. You get to be in an NCAA tournament team in Loyola Chicago. You throw down on Syracuse. UCF, I watching them in person, I was really impressed with the way that they were coached. I think Johnny Dawkins is a really good coach, and I like what he does, and I really hope that UCF succeeds. But Auburn was able to get a win over what I thought was a solid UCF program. You get a win over Yale, who I believe was an NCAA tournament team. You go to Atlanta, you almost drop 100 on Nebraska. Auburn just got out and ran in that game like crazy. And you also get a close win on the road against St. Louis. That was a really fun game. That was the game where Auburn's pick and roll really started to thrive with Walker Kessler and Wendell Green. It was really, really fun to watch Auburn come back into that game and essentially run the same play over and over. It's like you can't stop this. You can't stop the lob to Walker Kessler. That was a phenomenal game to watch. Caught a big dub against Murray State, a team that ended up going 31-3 and had everybody and their mother transfer out of the program over these past couple of weeks after their coach went and took the LSU job. Speaking of LSU, to open SEC play, you blew out number 16 LSU. Very impressive win at the time. Word of advice to LSU, don't get down 18-0 to start a game, or like 18-2 or whatever it was. And the first half of the SEC slate, like I mentioned, the guards were playing well. Everything was flowing smoothly. You picked up a really big win on the road at Alabama. That was a huge win. That was one of my favorite games of the season. Just a really, really tough win there. You beat Kentucky. You beat Oklahoma. You drop 100 on Alabama, and then the wheels start to fall off. And like I said, it's disappointing the way that the season ended. It's sad. We can acknowledge that. It sucked. But I think that you can't take away what this team accomplished. You have to acknowledge what they did this season. And some of the things that they did were really impressive. All right, the good first. Let's get to the good before we get to the bad overall. The guards were shooting very well early on. This is something that I noted as I was just running through the non-conference slate. Katie Johnson, Wendell Green, both playing very aggressive for the Tigers early, and they were shooting pretty efficiently. Both of them were. And Wendell Green, obviously, we're going to get to him in a minute. We're gonna grade everybody on the team that contributed. I was impressed with what he was doing early. Everybody wanted to compare him to Jared Harper. Harper's my favorite player to ever play the game of basketball. And I was sitting there thinking, is this kid about to have a better career than Jared Harper did at Auburn? He's got that killer instinct. He can shoot it from anywhere. He can get to the hole. He can lob it. He can dish it. He can do just about everything you want your point guard to do. And he and Katie Johnson playing very aggressive, playing very well early on in the season. People weren't applying a lot of pressure to Auburn. And I think that's one of the reasons why they faltered down the stretch. If you play high ball pressure, if you hedge Auburn, their guards are going to struggle for a couple of reasons. Number one, these guys specifically really struggled to shoot the ball down the stretch. And so you could easily kind of shut down a half-court offense that way. But also, Wendell Green really, really struggled considering he was a little undersized to get past those traps and to be able to maybe drive it a little bit, which is something he can work on this season. I'm really looking forward to seeing him come back. The pick and roll, like I mentioned earlier, was Auburn's bread and butter for the majority of the season. And then teams caught on to what Auburn was doing, and they started clogging lanes and shutting that down and rejecting lobs. And it was still really fun to watch Auburn's pick and roll work. And they did have moments as the season went on. They still were able to get it to work every now and then, just not as frequently as the beginning of the season. So the pick and roll, the guard shooting well, those were good. Walker Kessler picking up 2 triple doubles, like I mentioned earlier. Very, very, very impressed with Walker Kessler's development from year 1 at North Carolina to year 2 here with the Tigers. There are rumblings that are being thrown out there. There are rumors being thrown out there that he may potentially make a return to the Tigers this next season. Do I believe those rumors? I don't know. I don't think so. I would like to think that if he's currently being mocked as a first round pick, like a late first round pick, high second round pick, I would probably leave. I think Pearl would probably advise him to leave. But overall, I would like to see him come back. I don't know if he's going to. Walker Kessler picking up a triple-double twice, though. It was awesome. Jabari's game, one of the best seasons by an Auburn freshman in a very, very long time. I was very impressed with what Jabari was able to do with the shots he was able to create, and just his aggressiveness, his 3-point shooting, his defense was really solid. He brought a lot of energy to the game, and I love what Jabari did this season for the Tigers. It's a shame that his final game, potentially in an Auburn uniform, was that poor shooting performance against the Miami Hurricanes. It sucks. Again, like I mentioned earlier, it sucks the way that the season ended. But again, think about the whole. Think about Jabari's entire season. He had a great year. He had a really good year. There's a reason he was freshman of the year. And as the season went on, Bruce was telling him to be more aggressive, to take that shot. We got to see him in games late against Vanderbilt, on the road against Florida. We got to see Jabari Smith kind of take over in those games and really, really show his NBA ability. He just a phenomenal jump shooter, just a beautiful form. I really hope that he's able to do great things in the NBA if he does elect to declare for the NBA draft, and I would imagine he would. So those are some of the good things, and then one more good thing here. I got an image to pull up. Oh, man. The fan support was another great thing for the Tigers this season. Oh, no. Did I delete it? Nope. There it is. Yeah. The fan support was just absolutely phenomenal this season. Just all the different memes on Twitter, and I actually made one yesterday. You just lost to Lindsey Crosby's Cruton finger in the Braves World Series trophy. I saw Lindsey tweet that out last night. He's a writer here at Auburn Daily. Had him on the show yesterday to talk about Auburn baseball's game against Jack State. But I had to make a meme. I saw Cruton finger. I saw just a perfect image that was begging to be deep fried. We got to see some phenomenal memes by some really, really talented and creative people throughout the basketball season. We got to see that, like, all the way back in 2019. There were some memes, right? There were some early memes, but this season we really got to see the social media community for the Tigers take off. I would say that about 80% of it was healthy and entertaining. 10% of it was just a little strange and maybe a little uncalled for, maybe a little inappropriate, and 10% of it was just hateful. But the majority of the fan base, I would say 80%, the overwhelming majority of the fan base, knew everything, the memes and joking and posting things online. It was all in good fun, just supporting your team and being passionate about it. The creation of the peacock, obviously. Auburn apparently invented everything, which is something I didn't know until I made a Twitter account. Just phenomenal. The fan support, both online and then in person. The games against Alabama and Kentucky were some of the loudest games I've ever been to in my entire life. They were just phenomenal atmospheres. I'm getting chills just thinking about that Alabama game where we scored 100. Oh man, that was just so great. The fan support, absolutely fantastic this season. All right, the bad. We had the good. Let's get to the bad. Obviously, like I mentioned, the guard played down the stretch. Guys weren't shooting well. Guys were turning the ball over a little bit. Wasn't the best performance from Wendell Green or Katie Johnson over the final few games of the season. Zep Jasper, wouldn't necessarily say that he played poorly. We're going to talk about him. We're going to grade him and I'm going to give my thoughts. He's the first player that we're going to get to today. I want to see more out of him next season. And I don't think that he was not a bad presence on this team this year. But bad guard play down the stretch was a bad thing. The disappearance of the pick and roll, it faded. I mean, it was still there, but sparingly down the stretch. And it's not necessarily one of those where it's just like, oh, well, if Auburn had run the pick and roll more, then they would have won more games, won the national title, and Bruce Pearl would just be the best coach on the planet. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that it's a shame that teams caught on to what Auburn was doing and they were able to guard it so well. But it was obviously Auburn's most efficient and consistent play, or at least one of them. And B, it was really entertaining to watch. I mean, just to see 3 or 4 times a game, a 5'11" guy throw it up to a 7-footer, him catching and dunking. I mean, it's just to see that 3 or 4 times a game. We're talking about a program that was barely even capable of getting on the gym floor back in like 2014, 2015. I mean, you would see games where Auburn would be down by 40 points against Vanderbilt. I mean, it was embarrassing, some of the things that happened just a few short years ago. And think about the way that this program has evolved into what it is now. Is it a blue blood? Some people may not like me for saying this. No. But it definitely is one of the best. It's one of the stronger powers in college basketball right now. But it's so fun to see the players that Coach Pearl has recruited to come play here. It's very fun to watch them do impressive and athletic things like consistent pick and rolls and lobs. I mean, you got to see Devin Cambridge, who unfortunately is in the transfer portal. Got to see him do some incredible things during his time at Auburn, just some crazy athletic plays. It's just so fun to watch. But the pick and roll was definitely one of the more entertaining parts of the season. It's a shame that it faded. Shot selection. This was something that was consistent throughout the entire year. Shot selection for the team was poor. I believe it was poor. And you may say, well, guys like Wendell Green fogging up 30-foot three-pointers or pulling up from half court, or Katie Johnson consistently going to the hole on fast breaks and looking to draw contact and not actually looking to score or distribute or anything. Like you could talk about different mid-range jumpers from different players, or Walker Kessler shooting the 3-ball. It's like, sure, those guys could every now and then hit those shots, but in my opinion, it was not the most efficient decision that these individual players were making. And I wish there was a little bit more structure to Auburn's offense. And that's one of the pitches from Coach Pearl, right? You come to Auburn, you can play freely, you can do whatever you want in his offensive system. There's a little bit of structure, there's a little bit of flex in it. But overall, players get freedom to do some of the things they want. They get freedom to take those early shots. They get freedom to take those long threes. But I think that if the team had a little bit more structure, a little bit more discipline on the offensive end, they would be very, very, very successful. Not like they weren't this season, but some of the decisions that were made by not just the guards, but everybody, shot-wise, some of them were confusing to me. But that's okay. Not everything's going to be perfect. Turnovers late in the season also were a problem. Again, to go back to what I was saying way earlier, is that if you apply high ball pressure to Auburn, if you hedge screens and if you focus on the guards and making them uncomfortable, the half-court offense shuts down. And it led to a lot of turnovers. It led to Auburn panicking in moments and just not knowing what to do with the ball, getting rid of it and turning the ball over. We got to see that. It was on full display against Miami in the final game of the season. Just not knowing how to take care of the basketball. And then also, one more thing. This is the last bad thing. Not knowing how to manage end-of-game situations was another issue for the Tigers. I mean, we saw it time and time and time again. We got to see it against, gosh, who am I thinking of? We got to see it against Florida. We got to see it against Arkansas. And there was one more game where Auburn didn't know what they were doing at the very, very end. No, was that it? That might have been it. But there were moments where Auburn would have opportunities to capitalize at the end of games or potentially win it on a buzzer-beating shot. And they just some really I don't want to say dumbfounding because I don't want to rag on the team. I was impressed with some of the things that they did, but just some weird decisions at the end of games where you see Wendell Green at Arkansas fogging up a half court shot essentially at the end of regulation instead of making a better decision. You see at Florida, Auburn try to get the ball in, try and run a play for Kessler, and they're just simply not able to get it in, and they freak out and they don't know what to do with the ball. I think that it's good that Wendell Green is coming back for another season because if Auburn finds themselves in situations where they need a guy to step up and be clutch, I think Green has gotten a little bit more experience. He's gotten to learn. He's got to find out the bad side of what happens whenever you make bad decisions at the end of games. And I think he's going to be able to adjust. And I think that if Auburn finds himself down, they need a bucket. I think Wendell Green will be able to handle himself a little bit better this season. But that's the good, that's the bad, that's the overall thoughts of the team and their season. 28-6 on the year, 15-3 in the SEC. Cannot take away from the positives. There are some negatives. Let's acknowledge the fact that some of the things that happened at the end of the season stunk, but the positives were overwhelming. I think it was a good year. All right, let's get to some grades for some of the contributors on this team. We're actually going to go through every single person that contributed in some sort of major way. I think everybody's on here except Chris Moore, and Moore, I don't believe got enough. I don't think he got enough time. I believe he's averaging 7.3 minutes per game. I believe that's what I saw earlier. So we're not going to talk about him. We're not going to give him a grade. If I were, I would probably say B minus, somewhere around there. But Zep Jasper is the first guy on the docket today, giving grades for every single guy that contributed for the Tigers this season. What's up, Lindsey Crosby? You missed. I put up your meme earlier on the show. I put the you just lost to Lindsey Crosby's Cruton finger. You missed it. That was a good meme. I could not pass that up whenever I saw that on Twitter yesterday. Zep Jasper, though, I gave Zep Jasper a grade of B+. I was impressed with what Jasper did this season. He was a steady presence for the Tigers at point guard. He did not turn the ball over. That was well documented by a lot of different folk. And he was one of the team's best three-point shooters in conference play. Now, this is the issue I have with Jasper, and this is what I was hinting at earlier. I need him to be more aggressive next season. Now, will Pearl ask him to do that? I don't know. I don't know if Jasper does elect to come back, which I believe he's going to. I believe the Drive reported that just a couple months ago. But him coming back, I need him to be more aggressive with the basketball because offensively, he's got game. There was a reason this kid was averaging over 15 points a game at the College of Charleston. He's got the ability to score. I would love to see him really develop that at Auburn because if you can get your starting point guard and your backup point guard to score consistently, I mean that's a tough backcourt to stop, man. It's a tough backcourt to stop. Katie Johnson, let's go ahead and talk about Katie Johnson. I gave Katie a B- grade. Some of you may be disappointed in that. Some of you may be mad at that. That's okay. I get it. Some guys like some players better than others. It's completely fine. I don't have anybody graded like extremely harshly on this list. Because again, there's a reason Auburn went 28-6, and I think everybody contributed in a way. But Katie Johnson was a little out of control. Obviously, that was kind of his thing. High motor, got up and down the court real quick, very aggressive, getting to the basket, very energetic, very passionate. Had some fantastic memes made of him. But a B- for Katie Johnson because, again, like I documented earlier, the scoring at the beginning of the season from Auburn's backcourt was consistent and efficient. And Katie Johnson, we got to see it. He had some late game heroics against UConn. He had some late game heroics against Missouri, the arguably the tipping point of the season for me. But there were some ugly moments as the season winded down. And one of them obviously was that 0-14 performance against Texas A&M. And, you know, it's one of those things where it's just like, well, if he had stopped shooting, it would have shown that he'd lost his confidence. And I believe there's an NBA player, it might have been like Dion Waiters or something like that had a quote that's just like, I'd rather go 0-30 than 0-7 because 0-7 meant I stopped shooting. And I love the confidence that Katie Johnson brings to the table, but I need him to be more consistent as a shooter this next season. And the thing that confuses me is he was a consistent shooter at Georgia. He was shooting over 38% from three during his first season with the Bulldogs before he transferred over to Auburn. Again, he's tough, he's energetic, he's passionate. But again, I think he sought out too much contact on fast breaks. Struggled with his outside shot, especially as the season drew to a close. And I definitely think that he's got some things to work on this offseason, but he's not a bad player. Again, he had some heroics. Very confident. I love that. B- though. I think that's fair. I think that's fair. Wendell Green Jr. I've got Wendell Green Jr. graded as a B. So Zeb Jasper's a B plus, Katie Johnson's a B minus, and Wendell Green Jr. is a B. Wendell Green Jr., much like Katie Johnson, was very explosive, but Wendell was explosive in a different way. He could distribute, first off. We talked about those lob plays earlier. Wendell Green Jr., just a phenomenal distributor of the basketball. Very explosive, and he had that outside shot. Now, much like Katie Johnson, it began to falter. It began to fade as the season ended, but he's definitely still had that. We got to see it against Texas A&M in the SEC tournament whenever Auburn was trying to claw back in that game. Just the confidence to take some of the shots that he did in that second half. Very, very impressed with some of the things that Green did this season. But again, one of this team's shortcomings was not being able to shoot the three and occasionally turning the ball over a little bit. And Wendell Green struggled with that at times as the season ended. But overall, I think that there were things to build on. It was a great first year for Wendell Green, all things considered. He's coming back for his junior season. He's got room to grow, and I believe he's going to. So that's essentially, I believe that's all the backcourt. Yeah. Zeb Jasper, Wendell Green Jr., and Katie Johnson. Alan Flanagan. This is the lowest grade on the entire sheet here that I have on my notes. Alan Flanagan, I had graded as a C. And it's not, let's get this out of the way initially. I don't have Alan Flanagan graded so low just because I think there were a lot of things that were affecting him outside of his game on the court that hindered his ability to play well. And obviously the large one is his injury before the season. And it's a very, very tough injury to come back from. What happened with his leg and having to have surgery. The fact that he came back so quickly was impressive, but he just couldn't put it together. It was very, very clear he couldn't put it together. At times he looked a little lost. And I felt I'm not saying like I feel bad, like I pity Flanagan, because I believe he's going to come back next season. He's going to improve. It's just that not everybody comes back from injury the same. And Flanagan had a really, really tough go after he got back on the court. I expect him to be healthy next season, barring he doesn't transfer, which I don't believe he will. I hope he doesn't. I believe that Flanagan will be better next season. It's just, I think the injury got the best of him, and he struggled a little bit to put it together with this team. We've gotten to see what Flanagan looks like in a leadership type of role. We got to see that 14 points a game during his sophomore season. Does he return to something like that in 2022 during the 22-23 season? We'll just have to see. Devin Cambridge. Speaking of C plus for Devin Cambridge. He's bouncy. He's athletic. He can jump out of the gym. He can put both feet on the rim. He's very, very, very athletic. Don't get me wrong. But my issue with Devin Cambridge, again, I don't grade these guys to grade them negatively just to do so. This is how I feel about their season. If you disagree, leave it in the YouTube comments. If you're watching on Twitch, if you're watching on Facebook, before or after the live stream, or during or after the live stream, excuse me, just let me know what you think. But Devin Cambridge, I've graded as a C plus, was not the most efficient offensive player. Everybody knows Devin Cambridge's struggle shooting the three ball, statistically regressed every single year during his time with the Tigers. Shooting the outside shot was really, really not good this season. I believe he was shooting, I don't want to say something wrong here. I believe it was 22%. I can pull it up real quick. Devin Cambridge was, and I cannot pull his stats up. But anyway, point being is Devin Cambridge just didn't really have much game outside of the lobs that he caught and 22.1% from three. outside of the lobs that he caught and the occasional three-pointer that he made. After his freshman season, I had a lot of confidence that he was going to develop into somebody really special. He was one of my favorite players on that 2019 team. Just a great player off the bench. Inconsistent with his three-point shot a little bit, but when he got hot, he got hot. And we just didn't see that this season. And then obviously he transferred. He's going to go play with his brother. Best of luck to them wherever they land. I bet that's going to be a really, really fun duo to watch. And I hope that he does improve shooting. But one of my big complaints about Auburn basketball and Bruce Pearl is at times during his tenure, he's had players 1 through 3, pick whichever one you want, that could do individual things like shoot or pass, but he's lacked ball handlers at times. He's lacked people that could drive it or take it to the hole or just look comfortable with a basketball in their hands. Devin Cambridge did not look comfortable dribbling the basketball. And I don't expect every single player on the team to be able to dribble like Allen Iverson or Kyrie Irving. I'm just saying that just look a little bit more comfortable than what Cambridge looked like at times this season. He just was not that type of guy. And again, everybody has their role, but it would have been nice considering he was getting a large chunk of minutes to be able to have that and to be able to have that in your back pocket, because everybody else in the offense as the season winded down outside of Jabari Smith was struggling to be consistent. Would have been really nice to have had that guy at the 3 that could have maybe dribbled the ball around a little bit and maybe helped out the offense. But I'll tell you one way that Devin Cambridge helped out the offense, offensive rebounding. Talking about that bounciness. I mean, there's a reason he's named Bounce Man. He picked up a lot of offensive rebounds in key moments for the Tigers. All right, Lior Berman. I've got Berman graded as a B. Obviously, he got a lot of minutes during the non-conference stretch, was very efficient shooting the outside shot, much more consistent than I thought he would be. After seeing his form last season, not this season, but last season, I was intrigued, but I was confused. I'm like, how is that form getting that shot to go so consistently? And we got to see it this year. He was a really good three-point shooter. Was not, during his moments that he got after the non-conference slate, was not as consistent down the stretch. I actually don't remember the last time Berman made a 3. I don't know. Did he make one during? Surely he did make one during the SEC slate, but he didn't make a lot. Also didn't get a lot of minutes as competition ramped up. But props to Lior Berman for being a contributor and being somebody that made an impact during the non-conference slate. Made that key 3 against St. Louis late. One of the most clutch shots of the season. Lior Berman graded as a B. Jabari Smith Jr. We've got bigs from here on out. Jabari Smith Jr., A+, excellent. Excellent what we saw from Jabari Smith. One of the best jump shooters that Coach Pearl said he's ever seen. He could handle the ball. He could drive it. He could dish it a little bit as well. His outside shot was pure. He played really, really good defense, really, really feisty defense. He could rebound as well. Very aggressive, very energetic, very passionate. I loved what Jabari Smith did for this team this season. A+. Jaylen Williams. I've got Williams graded as a B+. Something intriguing that Bruce Pearl said just a week and a half or so ago, said that he was excited to come back this next season and build the team around Jaylen. And I saw on social media a lot of people push back on that. Be like, whoa, what you talking about, Bruce? What you talking about, Willis? Why are you saying that we're going to build the team around a backup power forward? What's going on here? I actually was excited whenever I heard that. We've in my opinion, we've gotten to see flashes of Jaylen Williams' potential as a player, and we got to see it a little bit more last season as his role expanded. He took a backseat to Smith this season. I got him graded as a B+. I think he played his role very well. And if it becomes larger in the 22-23 season, I think that he can handle it. I think statistically he's going to improve. The way he was shooting the 3 late at the end of the season, I hope we get to see that next year. Again, played within his role very, very well. I'm excited to see what he does next year because I think that the team could be built around him. I think he could be one of those dark horses to be an all SEC type of player, first, second team. Take your pick. Jalen Williams, I have graded as a B+. Played within his role very well. Got buckets when he needed to. Was not the best three-point shooter, but again, was shooting well as the season ended. Walker Kessler, A+. I mean, do I even really have to talk about what Jabari Smith Jr. and Walker Kessler did for the team? Both of them are A+. You don't really have to discuss it. Don't really have to debate it. Obviously, you hate what happened against Miami for both of those players, but on the season as a whole, both these guys were A+. Kessler, very, very solid rebounder. Needs to work a little bit on his back to the basket game. Could shoot the three ball a little bit. Very, very soft hands, something that Auburn fans complained about with some of the bigs during the Bruce Pearl era, especially Austin Wiley, is not being able to catch the ball well in the paint. Soft hands from Walker Kessler, able to catch lobs, able to catch wraparound passes. Just an excellent player at the rim. Again, back to the basket. Would love to see that develop a little bit more, but the thing that stood out about Kessler the most that I haven't mentioned is just shot blocking. And I believe he led the nation in blocks per game. I believe I should have pulled it up before we started the show. Should have seen how many teams did he beat out in terms of total blocks. Because he was incredibly dominant. Did he have more than North Carolina as a team? I'd love to know that. I would love to know that. But yeah, excellent defensive player. Obviously, there's a reason he was named DPOY. Excellent. A+. Don't even really have to say much else. And then finally here, last player that we're going to grade today, Dylan Cardwell. Some were upset with his rim defense, and I can understand. There were times where Cardwell was out of position, and he wasn't able to protect the rim as the backup center getting some minutes. But he was a really good shot blocker off the bench as well. I think that you put those two things hand in hand. It's just the inconsistency, and then also you get some nice blocks, 1.2 per game, I believe, off the bench. For the majority of the season, by the way, Cardwell was 5th in the SEC in blocks per game as a backup center, and Kessler was 1st. I think he did a good job. He's also shooting well over 65% on the season. We need to maybe see a little bit of a back to the basket game develop out of Cardwell. Would like to see that happen, but caught a lot of lobs, very athletic, very passionate. You love the energy that Cardwell brings. You get to see it in person. He's hype. I absolutely love it. Dylan Cardwell graded as a B. Again, occasionally his rim defense was questionable, but overall, I think he played solidly as a backup guy. 3 points and 3 rebounds. So I mean, he's got to see those numbers go up this next season. So those are all of our grades, every single one of them, for the entire Auburn basketball 2021-22 season. Graded all the players that contributed, went through the good, the bad, and everything in between. And there you have it. That's going to do it for today's episode of the Auburn Daily Show. Hey, make sure you're following us on the socials. All right. You can follow us at SI_Auburn on Twitter and at Auburn Daily on Facebook. We live stream every single day, or every single weekday, at 4 p.m. Central Time on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. All right. Yeah. Like I said, that's going to do it for today's episode. I will see you all tomorrow for the Thursday edition of the Auburn Daily Show. Have a good day, everybody, and God bless.